Sophie here as well. Handball, USA against Greenland. Sophie, fast hold, baseline, straight to the other end for a goal.
Hey guys, welcome to Red, White, and Blue, the U.S. Women's Handball podcast. I'm Viva Chris, and I'm the left wing on the women's national team, and I'm here with co-host Hendrik Schultz. He is our magnificent junior national team head coach who's leading us into the World Championships this year, and he's the assistant coach of the senior national team. Happy to be here with you, Hendrik.
Thanks, Viva. Amazing intro. I'm happy to be here. First episode. Let's go, right?
I know it's been a long time in the works, but I'm happy to finally be recording.
Me too. And I know who will be most excited, Edina, to have this episode.
She's been on our case for a while, so she'll be happy when this hits the air. So I know what most people want to know is why are we starting this podcast? So what's our aim and what should people expect from listening to this?
Well, first of all, handball is called not handball in the US, right? We call it team handball, and we'll get into wall handball and handball in a bit. Obviously, we're going to talk about the national teams. I'm the assistant coach. You said head coach for the juniors, assistant coach for the seniors. We have an amazing left wing in yourself here. So obviously we're going to talk about the senior national team of the women and also the juniors of the women. And then we have beach handball, national teams, and obviously the men. So a lot of great national teams to talk about. Club competition, right? You've played a little bit of club competition, right?
No, I haven't played any club competition in the U.S., only abroad. So we'll bring in some awesome guests who can tell us a little bit more about that. And we'll talk about past and future Olympics. So the title of this podcast, if you've seen it, is We Are Qualified for the Olympics. And so we'll get into talk about that and what it means for our team going forward. And then we're going to interview some handball greats. That's both on the U.S. side and abroad in Europe. And you'll hear some interesting stories from coaches, athletes, and USA Team Handball officials and board members. I know we have a lot of great guests lined up so far, so stay tuned and you'll get to hear from them.
I really thought that you've had at least some experience playing in a club.
No, because I just graduated from high school last summer and then moved straight to France literally less than 2 months later. So I had some coaches who were asking me if I could play for their clubs and club nationals and things like that. And I just didn't want to mess up my college eligibility and nothing. The dates didn't really work out with anything. So I've never played in the United States for a club team other than the U.S. national team. And that was kind of a problem that I had with getting my license in France and all of that. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that later. It's been a whirlwind, but
it definitely has. And that's one of the amazing stories we'll dive into. Maybe not today, but in a couple of future episodes. So yeah, we have a lot of great sections and topics we can talk about this for hours. But we're US handball, right? So why should people listen to us and why should people listen to US handball? Let's talk a little bit about the guests that we will have in the next weeks and months.
So the first guest that we have lined up is the CEO of USA Team Handball, the big boss, Martin Brannock. And so we're going to have him on, and I'm sure a lot of people want to hear what he has to say and his perspective, because we can't really talk about the ins and outs of the organization, and so he's going to do that for us. And I think both people living in Europe and living in the United States will really want to hear from him. I know I'm super excited to talk to him. And then, of course, we're going to have Edina Borsos. She's world-renowned, and I don't know who doesn't want to hear her talk. And, of course, she's the head coach of the women's national team. And she just came in, and I think it was 2020, over the pandemic, the transition happened. And so she's been really trying to bring life into USA Team Handball. So she'll be a great person to talk with.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, the end of 2021, you've been, I think her competition in Mexico, the qualifier,
first, wasn't
you've been part of that team, I think, right?
Yeah, I think her first national team event was the tryout that I went to in Chicago. And I know a lot of players who hadn't made the team had gone to Chicago, and that was kind of like the start of the new generation and everything. So Edina was there, Pauline, who I'm sure we'll talk to later, Martin was there. That was like the first thing back after the pandemic, at least that I remember, my first event with USA Team Handball. And then, yeah, that led to Mexico, and then all of that led to me moving to France. So it's definitely been a whirlwind with USA Team Handball, but I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
And who else are we going to talk to?
So my counterpart on the men's side, Danilo, he's the junior head coach, has been part of a couple of world championships, junior world championships, right? Also head coach in Cal Heat. So he has both the experience on the international level, on the national team level, and he knows also what's going on not only in US handball in general, but specifically around San Francisco. They've been to the Super Globe just recently, and I think they won one or two games. I saw a couple of posts, so he has some amazing stories and insights to tell us. Martin Bilello, youth head coach, also in Cal Heat. I think those two will have very interesting episodes here.
Yeah, and I think from Martin, I always see him posting about starting, youth clubs with high schools and middle schools and both boys and girls. So I think he's really spearheading the youth movement in the US. And so it'll be great to talk to him and see what we can do and what others can do to really start handball at the grassroots level. And we'll also talk to Michelle Mingsing, Mishi. She's the beach women's head coach. Sometimes she steps in and plays. I'm sure we'll hear that story. And she also plays and does a lot with Cal over in San Francisco as well.
Absolutely. We both met her at the same time, right? In LA last year.
Yeah, I had gone to a few beach things before that, but that was before she was head coach. So, yeah, I think it was really, we got to play with her and talk to her. And yeah, I really love her energy. So she'll be a great guest.
Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously, we're the US Handball Women's National Team podcast. We'll have a couple of players here. We'll have former US players. We even have, and some of the people in Europe I'm talking to, they don't know about the great history that we have. Been to the Olympics. We even had a scoring leader once. That's something I think not a lot of people know.
Yeah, this US Olympic trivia, we'll have to have maybe a trivia round, some questions to the audience.
Definitely. So we'll have a couple of amazing people, amazing female athletes, former players, also men, on the podcast talking about their journey, their individual US handball stories, and not only US handball greats, but also we'll have some top handball players here from Europe who are not they are European, they're not American. Some European champions, some Champions League winners. We're not gonna drop names for now. We're tease a little bit.
You'll just have to keep watching the podcast to find out.
All right.
And
Who
then
else
also on the US side, we're going to have club members and owners so that both people in the US and abroad can learn more about what the club scene really looks like in the United States. I know we've had some misconceptions about how many club teams we have, how many courts we have, and who can participate in these tournaments. And so I think just bringing in some of these people with firsthand experience will be really good just to tell it how it is and kind of stop those misconceptions. And if you're new to handball, this is a great way to see where clubs might be near you, and so you can learn how to join and start playing the sport. We'll also have some USA Team Handball employees and board members. Of course, that starts with Martin Brannick, but a lot of board members are former players and former Olympians, so they're great not only to talk about the going-ons inside of USA Team Handball, but also their past experiences with the game in the United States and in other countries.
Yeah, and to mention one name, we hope we have him soon on the podcast, Michael Wall, our president. I think alongside Martin, he has a lot of great things to talk about strategy-wise. Just I think a lot of people are curious about the future of US handball, like where are we going? So
yeah, I know that's a big topic.
I know. So we have a couple of amazing guests lined up and more to follow. What will people learn when they stick to us and keep listening?
Well, the big thing is that we have 4 more years, so start your countdown now because we are qualified for the Games in Los Angeles, the Olympics in 2028. And so basically, how I explain it to people is that since the United States is hosting the Games, we get an automatic qualification. So really, all that we're doing right now is planting seeds to go and have a great performance there.
Exactly. And there are two other big competitions lined up, right? So in 18 months, we're heading back to the world stage for it's been a long time since we've been
It has.
at a senior women's world championship. So 2025 is a big year. 2027 as well, qualifying through a wild card, and the same for the men. I think so. We just had a world championship, so it's going to be 2026, I guess. The next world championship should be right. So both women and men are qualified for the next big world championships until 2028.
So it's a big countdown for 4 more years, but in between we have lots of equally as big opportunities and goals that we hope that you stick along and follow along our journey with us and support us in any way that you can. And so, it's all about seizing the opportunities from here on out. You know, they might be given to us, but we're going to take full advantage.
But not only that, right? So you have one of the national team coaches here, one of the players. So obviously we're gonna have behind the scenes stuffs. We're gonna be really close to what is happening at the women's national team. And then, given that we play a lot, but given that we talk to a lot of those great people, really the insights, something that you cannot find on the internet, the stories that are not written, are not told about US handball, about the great clubs that we have, the great competitions that are in the US, the nationals, and obviously the great stories, right?
And this is the place to find them, that red, white, and blue. So if you have any questions, we'll get into that, how you can ask us. But there's really no better resource to kind of tell you about what's happening and how it's happening. So should we introduce ourselves?
I think so, because two Americans, you're in France, I'm in Germany. Viva, how did
this happen?
Exactly.
The same question. Yeah, so I can start. I can share a little bit about myself. I'm 19 years old. I play left wing for the junior and senior national team, and I'm currently living in France. I go to school at Arizona State University online, and I'm majoring in mass communications and media studies. Someday I hope to be a women's sports journalist, and that's all about me. How about you, Hendrik?
Yeah. So I'm in Germany. How did I end up in Germany? So born in Boston and moved to Germany when I was 5, and my entire family is German. So that's why they said at some point we'll have to move back. So I was raised in Germany and learned to play handball in Germany quite late for somebody who's living in Europe. With I think I was 11 or 12, which is pretty young if we talk to all the US handball players from the US.
Yeah, right. There's two extremes. You're either too old for one side or too young for the other. You're right in the middle.
Exactly. So then started coaching, and ultimately, after I finished my short career as a national team player for the US men's national team, went into coaching alongside my studies as marketing and corporate development bachelor and master's student. And Edina, I think 6 months after starting in 2021, in the summer of 2022, she took me on as her assistant coach in the women's national teams, and she's been bothering me about starting this podcast for 2 years. So now finally we're here.
And a fun fact about Hendrik is that he actually has a sister on the team. So if you see the same last name, that's how it is. And so I'll tell everybody a little bit about how I started playing handball. And so I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is not a handball mecca. But I actually started playing the game in middle school gym class. We played an altered version of the game, like has happened across, so many middle schools and PE classes across the United States. And I came from a basketball and soccer and long distance running background. And so handball was kind of like all the things that I enjoyed doing, but combined. And so I came home from school literally that same day and told my mom, I want to learn how to play this sport. And so she started Googling it. She didn't even know what team handball was, and found that there was a club about an hour and a half away from my house. And so she just sent them an email and said, my daughter is really interested in the sport. Can she come and just watch one of your practices? And so a couple weeks later, we went and we showed up, and it was just a group of maybe 5 or 6 older men just playing the sport. A lot of them were immigrants that had played the sport in Europe and then moved to the United States. And they actually invited me down on the court, and I got to participate in their practice. They gave me a women's-sized handball, the first real one that I had ever seen. And so, yeah, it was just a great opportunity, and it just showed how the handball community in the United States is really welcoming. And unfortunately, I only got to go to 2 or 3 of those practices, and then the pandemic hit, and that basically ruined all of my handball opportunities. But during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to join the Youth Advisory Council. I don't know if you know much about this, Hendrik, but
I know a little bit. I know
basically,
about
yeah.
that story.
So it's actually a few of us on the junior national team right now, Amanda, Julia, and Hannah, and we all worked on different social media accounts trying to grow handball with the next generation in the United States. And so that was a good opportunity to just connect with, I mean, basically everybody in the handball community. I was working on the TikTok account, so if you go deep enough, you'll see some of my voiceovers and things that I knew just as much as the average person about handball, but I had that opportunity. And then, just as we were talking about earlier, in February of 2022, I went to a junior national team tryout in a small gym in Chicago, and I made the team. I didn't know that much about handball, but just based on athletic ability, and it's been history ever since. Just a year and a half later, I moved to France, and here I am. Been playing handball for about 2 years, so that's my handball story in a nutshell.
And this is, I think, one of the parts of every story is that you kind of find handball by accident, maybe, or you just show up in the gym, and then a couple of players are there. And I'm not sure, have you ever, so before you marry your mother, said like, hey, let's try this, did you ever see it on the Olympics?
No, I hadn't. It's because in the United States, when it's on in the Olympics, it's at midnight at 2
Yeah,
a.m. because
right.
that's what they show, just the reruns and things like that. So, no, just before middle school gym class, I had never heard of the sport, and we weren't even playing it correctly. It was like basket with the basketball and just throwing it with 2 hands against a wall, but I was beating up on the boys, and so I found that really fun. And yeah, so I mean, I think that's a common theme, like you were saying, with a lot of our players is it's like they were playing one sport and they kind of came to a crossroads and they somehow found handball, or handball found them in a lot of cases. But I think the common theme is that they all took the opportunity when it was presented to them. And I think
Exactly.
that says a lot about the community in the US.
Yeah, and that's, you made a great point. Either by accident or by a little bit of luck, handball found them or they found handball, and it's very similar with me. So, growing up in Germany, went through the German system of kind of these regional selection teams until you make it to the last regional selection team, and then it's the junior national team. And I actually was in the same selection team like Ian Hooter. We'll probably have him on the
Yes.
podcast later.
Okay, yeah.
Who's now the captain of the men's national team. We played on the same regional selection team, trying to become a junior national team player for the German
That's
national team.
crazy. Such a small world. Like, I'm sure you
Exactly.
never could have imagined when you were a teenager that.
Yeah,
Ah,
and then we both didn't made it, and
yeah.
that's when my story could have continued, because I sent a lot of videos to the US Federation, and I thought, okay, if I don't make it to the German junior national team. I'll definitely make it to the American.
Right.
And then nothing happened, right?
Oh.
And then a couple of years later, just by accident, US Handball found me, I think, because I was actually as a coach in with a club, TSV Bayer Dormagen, one of the second division clubs in Germany, with Jamal Naji, who's now coaching a different club. But he said, Hendrik, come with me. I need another goalkeeper coach for this camp we're going to. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll be with you. And then we went into the gym on the day that we went to drive to the camp, and he said, let's go and get some extra stuff. And we went to the gym and got the extra stuff, and there was a team training, practicing in Dormagen. And I said to Jamal, that's not Dormagen, that's not the second division team, I know them, that's not them. And he was like,
You
yeah,
could tell.
this is the American national team. I was like, okay, so can I play? And he was
Right?
confused. He was confused for a bit because he didn't remember that I have the dual citizenship. So
Yeah.
long story short, talked to Robert, and then a couple of months later, got an invitation to the next camp. But between those two periods, like with Ian trying to become a German national team player, and then this one, I think that was 4 or 5 years. And handball, or specifically US handball, has not been part of my life ever since.
Right?
So really
It's just
stuck to me.
Yeah, just one moment could be so transformative. I mean, I didn't know that story about you, Hendrik, or about your journey with USA Team Handball, but if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be sitting here on a podcast right now. And I think like little things like that are just so crazy, but they're perfect coincidences that turn into something a lot bigger.
Exactly. So easy, maybe more shorter question. How long exactly have you been playing?
I say 2 years because maybe 2 years and 1 month, because in March of 2022 is when I went to Mexico for the first time, and that was the first time I had even seen handball lines on a court. So I think that's what I count as when I first started playing handball. So just about 2 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll dive a little bit more into the multi-sport background, I think, when we have a couple of other players with us on the podcast, and how we think that it gives us a competitive edge. Because the truth is, most of our players that are not dual citizens, right, they start really late, but we still produce a lot of great athletes.
Yeah, I think all American or non-dual citizens are at least played one or two other sports before they found handball. And I think it's really interesting to see the different qualities that some certain sports transfer to the handball court, whether that's volleyball, basketball, soccer, especially in different positions. You know, the volleyball players tend to be taller and they're backs. And of course, a soccer goalie translates pretty well to a handball goalie. And so just things like that. And we have a lot of players who can share their personal stories and how they've found that their skills and attributes have transferred to the handball court.
Exactly. So we talked a little bit about our individual journeys. Maybe before we jump into a little bit of team handball versus wall handball, we know our positions, but one favorite thing for you about US handball, I mean, our journeys have been similar of length, but yeah, what has stuck out for you so far?
I would say just like the handball community. I think how well we've been able to I've been able to bond with my teammates, whether they're twice my age or my same age with the junior national team. I think everybody's just collected over a common goal, and I've never been a part of something where everyone is so determined and has so much togetherness before. And so I think, yeah, just my teammates and my coaches and the handball family is my favorite part of handball in the U.S. How about you, Hendrik?
It's very similar. I would say I've been to a couple of international tournaments with my club when I was still playing in Germany, especially to Denmark, where we had clubs from Asia, from India, South Korea, from China, and then we had obviously all the European countries, but then also Brazilian teams, and but that was like different teams or different clubs in one tournament.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
now to have all these different cultures and nationalities in one team, in one national team, because the reality is we have Americans that are born and raised in America. We have Americans similar to myself, have a dual citizenship that come from Europe. Then we have somebody from Israel, right? When I played, I had a couple of teammates who were from Israel. We have teammates that have been born in South Korea. We have a couple of players that come from Brazil, from Argentina, from Chile. So I think
Guatemala, Mexico, Canada. Yeah.
exactly. So I think this rich experience, these different cultures coming all together, and then finding the solution right on the court, on the handball court. I think that's amazing to see.
Yeah, we say the United States is a melting pot, but I think nowhere defines that as well as our handball team. I think every single player is different in their own way, whether that's their dual nationality or their life experiences or how long they've been playing handball for. So I think when all of that comes together, sometimes you would think that it might clash or be bad, but I think we all gel really well together and have this kind of unspoken relationship. So now should we get into the real topic of the episode, what everybody's been waiting for?
Let's go. Let's talk about team handball versus handball.
Yeah, are there differences? Why does USA team handball, why is it team handball in front of it?
So the short answer is there is wall handball. I cannot even pronounce it correctly. Wall handball in America. So Viva, tell us a little bit more. Wall handball is similar to squash, right? But not really.
Yeah, it's kind of like racquetball, but you don't have a racket and you just have your hand and you wear a glove on your hand and you're basically batting a ball against the wall. I'm sure somebody can give a better definition, but there's definitely a common misconception when I say, oh, I play handball for the United States, and they say, oh, I used to play racquetball. And I'm say, well, it's not like that. It's actually more like basketball or soccer. And so, yeah, I think that's one thing that we kind of struggle with within handball in the United States is the misconception and the confusion between the two sports.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure, but I think you have a couple of great stories. Maybe I have a great story standing at an airport and somebody, I think it was actually this. Okay, so for all the listeners who don't see the video now, I had the Olympic sign here and they were like, okay, so which Olympic team or sport are you representing? I was like, yeah, handball. Oh yeah, and the same thing. I played it myself. I didn't know it was Olympic. I said, no, probably you don't know. So
yeah.
And after explaining and explaining, I was like, okay, this is too exhausting. I need to find a better way to explain
it goes
handball.
nowhere.
So now I have every time I travel, I have I have the YouTube not open but ready because we actually have a great 3 minutes. Yeah, exactly. So I have something to show them, and after they watch it, they're like, "Oh, damn! This is an amazing sport. How did we never see this on television so far?"
No, I have similar stories, and I have my kind of paragraph that I go to in my mind of saying, well, it's like water polo on land or soccer with your hands. It's played on a little bit bigger than a basketball court with a ball that's a little bit smaller than a volleyball. And then, then sometimes I decide to not even, fight the battle and say, yeah, I play handball. And if they want to believe that they also used to play handball against a wall, then they can believe that too. But whenever anybody asks me, I always try to direct them to that video because I think it does a really good job of just condensing, the main aspects of handball. And I think it's really good when you can see the sport. It's hard to explain because you say there's a goalie and there's a goal, but it's on a basketball court and things like that. So if you can see it visually, I think that helps to understand it a lot better.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy that we're not going down the road of calling it American handball.
Right.
I think for Europeans, it's enough that we have American football
Yes.
and didn't call it soccer. I know.
We won't add one more thing to it.
No, definitely not. I know a lot of people are sometimes confused. It's American football, but you're not really kicking the ball, right? Why call it American football? So no, it's
Yes.
team handball, and USA, or our federation, is taking the route of not trying to get in conflict with handball or being confused with wall ball, but we'll brand it for the North American continent as team handball. But I think we will always say handball, even though our brand says team handball.
Yeah, going forward, we'll just refer to it as handball, and I think everybody who's listening to this podcast knows what we're talking about. So that's good.
Exactly.
So we have some open questions. Do you want to start with that, Hendrik? I know you're into the LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's true. I asked my LinkedIn network because I was very curious to tell me what they think, how many active clubs we have. I think this poll is still running, and also how many clubs, and not clubs, how many courts they think we have. And with courts, I mean the European style, right? Or the European sizes, and all the lines are actually marked, plus really handball goals. Because if you go down the rabbit hole of watching some US handball clips, you see all kinds of different handball goals, but they're not really handball goals like you would see them in Europe. So we're not gonna answer the question yet, but those we'll dive into when we talk to a couple of club owners, right? And I think there's a big misconception about what US handball or the national teams, how much money or how much
Definitely.
professional structure there is. The brand USA is so big, and the US Handball
Yes.
Federation is comparatively small, I would say, at this point. So I think there are some great questions to answer.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception that I even had before I started playing handball. It's like, well, the Olympics in the United States are so coveted, and Team USA is held to the highest standard and must have the highest funding. It's like, well, yeah, Team USA does, but all of these organizations and governing bodies fund themselves. So sports like basketball and track and field, they have a lot of sponsors and they have a lot of success, so they have a lot of money. But these smaller sports aren't getting the same funding because they're not making Team USA as much money and things like that. But that'll be something to talk about with more of the experts in that field.
Exactly. And we'll dive into questions like, what do the structures really look like? How do we develop right now? How would we like to develop, right? Because your journey and your story, my journey, is learning handball by accident, and that's not a sustainable business model or sustainable recruiting model. So we'll dive into those questions and what the situation and the answers look like. And then I'm not sure who asked me this question, but how impossible is handball development in the US? And I had to smile at that question. We'll ask Martin exactly the same, and I'll be very interested. It will be very interesting to see what he thinks about this question.
Yeah, I think one of our kind of team mottos that Adina has repeated on and on again is, there are no problems, only solutions. And I think that applies to a lot of aspects within team handball in the United States and the women's national team, is that they might seem like problems, but we will always find and work to find a solution. So I think that's just a great motto in life. And I think, yeah.
A lot of great questions. a lot of great answers. So looking up to the next episodes.
Yeah, how can you get into contact with us? How can you learn more about USA Team Handball and the women's national team in particular? I think we'll drop all these in the comment section in the bio, but you can go to the USA Team Handball website. It's just usateamhandball.org. Follow the USA Team Handball Instagram account as well as USA Handball WNT. And then on YouTube, this is where the live recordings of our podcast will be posted, and that's just USA Team Handball. And so I think through those 3 different avenues, you can find a lot of what you're looking for. And of course, follow Hendrik on LinkedIn, and you can follow me on Instagram at Viva_Las Vegas.
And besides that, what do we want from our community? Because it's all about growing and giving back to our amazing, not only US handball community, but the handball community, right? So, I mean, we already said that we have gotten some amazing questions that we will answer. So yeah, shoot us a text, shoot us a question.
Slide into our DMs and we'll answer them
exactly
on the podcast. So
let us know what you want to know, and probably also I'm always very curious for the US Americans and also the Europeans, how and when they learned about US handball, because it's not a big thing, right?
No, and how'd you learn about us? That's what we want to know, because then we can keep building these connections further.
All right.
So it was great talking with you today, Hendrik, and I think that's it for the Red, White, and Blue, the U.S. Women's Handball Podcast.
Thanks, Viva.
Thank you. See you next time.